Once you're ready, just grab yourself a mic. There's a mic on the shelf here, and come sit in front and read. Great, yeah, grab that mic there. Yeah. And then make sure you touch this to it. It's magnetic, yeah, just excuse my left hand. Huh?
Page for
It is what page, sisters? 35. Just, yep. Yeah. Read and ready from the sunset prayer.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رضي الله عنكم. Sunset prayer. Its time is from after the sun disappears until the red glow, along with the horizon disappears. Night prayer. Its time is from after the end of sunset prayer's time until the rising of true dawn. Morning prayer. Its time is from after the end of the night's prayer time until the sun rises. These 5 obligations within their times are required of every Muslim who is mature, of sound mind, and pure from menstruation and postpartum bleeding. It is unlawful to perform them before their time or to delay them beyond their time without an excuse. One is required to make them up if a preventer like menstruation, postpartum bleeding, insanity, loss of consciousness, intoxication, and apostasy arises after a period of time has passed from the beginning of its time long enough to contain its performance, without taking into account the time required for obtaining purification for it, for some free of incontinence and its like, and long enough to contain it with obtaining purification for it for someone with a medical condition like incontinence. But if the preventer ceased while enough time remains to say the opening Allahu Akbar, one is responsible for it, while also being responsible for the prayer is its predecessor. If it is one that is permissible to combine the current prayer with it, when the duration of being free of the preventer is enough to encompass purification in both prayers.
Read or half the next section.
What is required of guardians? It is required, being a communal obligation, for the guardian of an immature male or female who has reached the age of discernment to command them to pray and to teach them its rulings after 7 lunar years of age. After 10 years, he is required to strike them for forsaking it, like he must for fasting that they can endure. He is also required to teach them what beliefs and rulings they are able to understand, and to teach them what is obligatory for them and unlawful to them after maturity as well, and likewise what has been legislated, like siwak. Those in authority.
That's good. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So the author is, if this book is for one of the sisters, if they want to send a kid to grab the book, if they'd like it back. So the author is continuing here talking about the times of prayer. And last time we were talking about the times of Dhuhr and Asr, and we were talking about how those times are broken up. Every single prayer, its time is broken up into the best time to pray it, Waqt Fadila, the second best time, Waqt Ikhtiyar, the time that is permissible without karaha, without dislike, which is, and then the time that is permissible with karaha, the time that it is makruh to pray the prayer in that time, or is makruh for a person to have delayed the prayer until that time, and the time that it is sinful that the person delayed the prayer to that time, which for every prayer is the same. That last one is the same for every prayer, which is to delay the prayer until you can no longer complete that prayer in its time, at its minimum length, right? So, like for example, the minimum that I need to pray a prayer, just the pillars of the prayer, just the core elements, not the sunan. The minimum that's required, it'll take me 2 minutes, and I delayed the prayer until there's 1 minute left. That's sinful for me, right? It's not sinful. You have to pray it right away. What's sinful is not praying it in that time. What's sinful is that you delayed it until that time. Okay, so now the author says, and maghrib, and the dusk prayer, the sunset prayer. Its time is from when the sun disappears along the horizon, right? And what we mentioned yesterday is that this means the entire disk of the sun has gone below the horizon. And this also doesn't mean, like, for example, if there's trees, you say, okay, well, the sun disappeared, I don't see it anymore. No, it means that if it was clear, the disk would have gone below the horizon. So part of that means is that if we're not able to tell that with certainty, then you wait until you are certain, right? You wait until there's no shadow of a doubt that the sun must have gone below the horizon, which is what we do in Ramadan, which we'll talk about more when we get to fasting. And its time ends until, how does he translate the end time of Maghrib? What does he say?
Until the red glow along the horizon
Yeah.
disappears.
Yeah, the red glow along the horizon disappears, right? إلى مغيب الشفق الأحمر. So there are, at nighttime, after the sun goes down, there are 3 different glows that the fuqaha talk about, right? That are indicators of evening prayers. One is the red glow, one is the white, and one is the yellow. The red glow indicates that it's Maghrib time. So once that red glow disappears, now we know it is time for Isha. So Maghrib time ends with the red glow. And then the time of Isha enters with the disappearing of the red glow and the remaining of the white and yellow. And so they say that, or yellow and white rather, they say that these different glows or these different lights that you see in the horizon, and really it's kind of, it might be hard to see in our locality with the amount of light pollution that we have, but somebody who was in the ocean on a clear night or in the desert, they would see these things much more clearly. These astronomical signs. The yellow light disappears shortly after that, and the white light disappears shortly after that. So Isha time comes in is once the red glow disappears, and what remains is yellow and white, and eventually those will disappear shortly after that. Oh no, thank you. Okay, so Maghrib time. What are the best times to pray Maghrib, or what is the best time to pray Maghrib? So for the other prayers we saw yesterday, that they have a waqt fadila, the best time. That time ends, and then waqt ikhtiyar starts. The second best time starts. That time ends, and then waqt jawaz starts. Permissible time starts. Bila karaha, without dislike. Maghrib, the waqt fadila, the best time, and waqt ikhtiyar, and waqt jawaz bila karaha, all of those are the same time, which is from the beginning of the time of the prayer until the time that passes that encompasses all a person needs to pray that prayer, right? From adhan and wudu and covering the awra and finding the qibla and praying to rak'ah sunnah and iqama, and then also praying the prayer. The time it takes to do all that, that is waqt fadila for every other prayer. For Maghrib, that is waqt fadila, the best time. Waqt ikhtiyar, the second best time, and waqt jawaz bila karaha, the permissible time without karaha, dislike. After that time passes, which some of the ulama in where we studied, they would say it's like 14 minutes. I've heard 16 minutes. It'll vary. It'll vary a little bit. After that time passes, then enters waqt jawaz bi karaha. Then enters the dislike time to pray that prayer. Right? So delaying Maghrib at 15, 20 minutes after it comes in, significantly, that's makruh. That's makruh. And that time could also be further than that. It could be more than that, depending on what is needed to pray that prayer, what is needed for a person to prepare themselves. It could be a little bit more than that. The point is what? Is that we should pray Maghrib soon after we are certain that the sun has gone down. Right? After we are certain that the sun has gone down. Naam. And then for Isha is a little bit more complicated. So Isha, waqt fadila, the best time is that beginning time that we talked about, right? That 14, 15, 16, 20 minute time in the beginning. That's the best time. Then waqt ikhtiyar, the second best time is from the end of the best time until they say al-isfar. Al-isfar is this time where you can still see somebody around you. Like if you're in like a forest, there's still enough light for you to see. There's still enough light, however faint, to see. Once it's like pitch black dark outside, that ends the second best time. Then the time of permissibility without karaha, without dislike, is from that time until the last third of the night. Until the last third of the night. That's not what I had in my notes. What I had in my notes is that it's until the last third of the night. We'll review that. And then the disliked time is from that last third of the night, or from the beginning of the last third of the night until the end of the time. Of course, until that which encompasses the prayer. So for Isha prayer, a person shouldn't delay it until the end of the night, right? Until before Fajr. They should pray it before then. Then he mentions Fajr prayer, subh, Fajr prayer. And its time is from the end of the Isha prayer, which is, they say, طلوع الفجر الصادق. طلوع الفجر الصادق. The arising or the rising of the true Fajr. What does this mean, true Fajr? There are two Fajr times that were established at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Fajr al-Kadhib wal-Fajr al-Sadiq. The fake Fajr and the true Fajr. The fake Fajr, they say it's a light that you see on the horizon that rises up in a particular direction vertically. So you would see in the horizon, it rises up vertically and then it disappears. They say the true Fajr is light that rises on the entire horizon horizontally. So you see it up along the entire horizon, and it does not disappear. This is the true Fajr. And so at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they would give two adhans. One adhan at the time of the false Fajr, and one adhan at the time of the true Fajr. Right? And this is how we understand the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And again, this will come more in fasting, where the Prophet ﷺ, he says that if one of you hears the adhan and in their hand is something that they're drinking, a vessel that they're drinking from, then let them not put that drink down until they have taken their need from it. Does this mean that a person drinks while they're fasting after the true Fajr comes in? No. This is referring to the false Fajr, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ, in another hadith, he mentioned that if you hear Bilal make the adhan, then continue eating until the adhan of Ibn Maktum, which were the two mu'adhins of Fajr. Bilal would do the first one, Ibn Maktum would do the second. If I'm not mixing them up. So that's how we understand that, is that the real Fajr that comes in is Al-Fajr al-Sadiq. And it comes in hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Al-Fajr Fajran, Fajrun yuharrimu al-ta'am wa tahillu fihi as-salah. Wa Fajrun tahrumu fihi as-salah wa yahillu fihi at-ta'am. That there are two Fajr. One Fajr that the prayer becomes permissible, meaning the prayer comes in, which is Fajr, and eating becomes impermissible while you're fasting. That's the true Fajr. And another Fajr that the prayer is not permissible, meaning the Fajr prayer, but eating is permissible. That's the false Fajr. And so from this we understand the difference between the two Fajr. And this hadith is narrated by Ibn Khuzaymah and Al-Hakim, and they deemed it as sahih. Any question on times of prayer before we move on? Bismillah. So he says then, these prayers, these obligatory prayers are obligatory in their times upon every single Muslim that is baligh aqil. Right? Baligh aqil, tahir. Baligh aqil means what? Means mukallaf, like we said yesterday, right? Every Muslim that is legally responsible. They've reached puberty and they are of sound intellect. And then he adds also here, tahir, meaning what? Meaning that it is not obligatory upon a woman who is on her menses or has postnatal bleeding. It is not permissible, it is not obligatory upon her, nor is it permissible for her to pray it, nor is it valid if she did pray it. And nor is it required of her to make that up, right? Only fasting is required to make it up. And he says, فَيَحْرُمُ تَقْدِيمُهَا. It is impermissible to bring the prayer earlier from its time. And it is impermissible to delay the prayer outside of its time, both of those things without a lawful excuse. Without a lawful excuse. What is a lawful excuse? Like a valid travel. A valid travel as defined by the Sharia, right? That a person could pray Asr in Dhuhr time, Dhuhr in Asr time, Maghrib in Isha time, Isha in Maghrib time. But a condition of that is that a person knows the what makes a valid travel, what makes a travel valid for a person to be able to combine and shorten their prayers, right? And a person should be cautious to just combine and shorten willy-nilly, right? A person should make sure that they know that this travel that I have traveled on is valid according to Sharia for me to combine and shorten in. And he mentions, and then another point about this is, what about for a person who is sleeping? A person who sleeps through their prayer, or they, for example, they are unconscious, they lose their sanity. This is a person who the pen is lifted from this individual during that time. So somebody who sleeps through, for example, Dhuhr, right? It's Ramadan, taking a big midday nap, they sleep through Dhuhr. It's not sinful for them that they slept through it, but they must, with conditions, but they must make it up, right? And this is for somebody who slept before Dhuhr came in and they woke up after it came out. So for example, somebody an hour into Dhuhr hasn't prayed Dhuhr yet, and they're like, all right, I'm just going to take a nap. And they end up sleeping through it. That's sinful. The person is at fault because the time came in and you could have prayed it and you carelessly slept. Right? Unless the only exception to that is if a person is sure that they'll wake up before the time goes out. If the person is sure to wake up, that they'll wake up before the time goes out, then they're allowed to sleep after the prayer comes in without praying it. But if they're not sure, they're like, well, it's a toss-up. Maybe I'll wake up, maybe I won't. That's impermissible. A person prays and they go ahead and take their nap. And also a person who continuously misses a prayer, like sleeps through a prayer, that is sinful. Right? Continuously does it. That is sinful. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from that. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the oath or the trust or the covenant that is between us and Allah, or that differentiates between us and the disbelievers, is the salah. Is the prayer, right? Right. It is a command from Allah and His Messenger ﷺ for us to pray our prayers at their times, in their times. And where do we get these times from? We get these times from Hadith Jibreel, where Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, he comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he teaches him the times to prayer. So the first time he comes to him at the beginning of the prayer, when the prayer starts. The second time he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he came to him later on during the prayer time to indicate that it's not just at the beginning, it's at this interval that you are allowed to pray. And then he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, he begins with this mas'ala of what is called in Arabic, mas'alat turu al-mani' wa khulu al-mani', right? Or turu al-mani' wa zawal al-mani'. The mas'ala, or the issue of, how does he translate that here? He says, فإذا طرأ المانع, if a preventer comes. It's at the end. He'll say like, it's not permissible to delay it without an excuse.
Yeah, it's preventer. Yeah.
What's the sentence? What do you say?
When the duration of being free of the preventer is enough to encompass purification in both prayers.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So he says, فإن طرأ مانع كحيض. If a preventer occurred, from prayer, something that would make it so that a person cannot pray, such as a woman's menses, after enough time has passed in that prayer time that you could have prayed it. So dhuhr time comes in. It takes you, for example, 2 minutes to pray dhuhr in the shortest time possible. Dhuhr time comes in, 2-3 minutes passed, and the sister finds that she's on her menses. That prayer is obligatory for her to make it up later. Once that preventer disappears, that prayer is obligatory for that woman to make up. Or somebody, dhuhr comes in, 3 minutes passed, and they lose their mind. Right? They lose their mind. We ask Allah to protect us and protect our intellects. Ameen. They lose their mind until Asr time. They say, "Oh well, I wasn't in my sound mind at that time, or I went under like in a coma, or I went under for an operation." It is obligatory upon them to make up that prayer. And he mentions that for somebody who is incontinent, or for example, like a sister who has irregular bleeding, abnormal bleeding, that is not considered part of the menses. Somebody who is in that state, the time period must encompass how long it would take them to make wudu and pray, right? Because the incontinent person, they are commanded, as it'll come later, they are commanded for every single obligatory prayer that they have like an order to do. They have to clean themselves, make wudu, and pray immediately after. They have to immediately do that all together. So if the time doesn't fit all of that for them, then they don't have to make up that prayer. And if it does fit all of that, then they have to make it up. So this is the first half of the mas'ala, which is mas'alat turu al-mani', right? Something happens that prevents you, like something occurs all of a sudden that prevents you from praying that prayer. The second half is zawal al-mani', right? The removal of the preventer. What does this mean? This means, or the example of this is, a person is, or a sister is on her menses, and there's 2 minutes left for dhuhr, or let's say there's 30 seconds left for dhuhr. Make it really small, and then all of a sudden, the menses period has ended. If that time period remaining of that prayer can fit the opening Allahu Akbar of the salah, then that prayer, the sister must make it up. Right? So like, for example, you see like there's 1 minute left to dhuhr, for dhuhr, before the prayer time goes out, the preventer, in this case, or in our example, the menses has ended. Say, oh, well, I couldn't even fit the prayer in the time. I don't have to pray it. No, the ulama, they say, if you could have fit Allahu Akbar in the time, then you must make it up. So it's important to differentiate between these two masail. I want to make sure everybody understands that when we're talking about turu al-mani', the preventer occurring, you have to have been able to fit the prayer in the time. When we're talking about the preventer being lifted, you have to have been able to just fit Allahu Akbar in the time, the opening takbir, which is really just like like 1 or 2 seconds. And then they mention another detail of this is, let's say it's Asr time. So there's 1 minute to Maghrib. Menses has ended. The sister must make up that Asr and that Dhuhr, they say. The Asr and the Dhuhr. Because they say Asr is one of the times of Dhuhr, if a person's traveling. So the person makes up Asr and Dhuhr. Similarly, there's 1 minute left to Fajr. Menses stops. The sister must make up Isha and Maghrib. Right? And let's say let's say there's 3 minutes left until Maghrib. It's Asr time, 3 minutes left. Menses stops, right? The sister has enough time to somehow quickly shower and pray Asr in its time, or pray a prayer in its time. What does that individual pray? Which one do they pray? Do they pray Dhuhr first or Asr? They would pray Asr first. They would pray Asr because Dhuhr at that time would be considered Qada anyways. It's considered a make-up prayer anyways, whether you prayed it then or you prayed it later. Another point about this is all of the prayers in these scenarios that somebody must make up, they can make it up at al-tarahi, right? They can make it up at their leisure. It's not at al-fawr, it's not immediately, right? What is the difference there? Is that something that the Sharia says you have to make this up immediately? Every moment that you're not making it up, you're sinful, right? You have to immediately make it up. Versus these make-up prayers, you can delay it. Like, you're trying to, it's 1 minute before Asr, it's Ramadan, it's iftar time. You don't have to rush to make up that Dhuhr and Asr. You can pray that later, right? You can pray that later, but you still owe it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like if you pass away before making it up, that will be something that a prayer you did not fulfill to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It will be held against us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from that. Ameen. And there's one more message I wanted to mention. Oh, okay, here we go. Yes, okay, here it is. One more detail. Let's say the person, the preventer is removed right before Asr. Okay, so or right before Maghrib, excuse me, in Asr time. Okay, so then I have to make up my Asr and my Dhuhr. What if the preventer comes back like a minute later? Such that I couldn't, even if I was pure, there's no way I could have prayed this prayer in this time, right? So like a person, for example, like a sister is only pure for 2 minutes, or a person, they are only of their sound mind, like they wake up from a coma for 2 minutes and then they go back to sleep. What is the ruling there? They say that the person does not have to make up this prayer because the time didn't even after the time of the salah left, that time did not encompass a full prayer. The time that the mana, the preventer, was gone did not encompass a full prayer. So for a person to have to make up a prayer after the mana, the preventer is removed, two things have to happen. They have to the preventer has to have been removed with enough time from the prayer remaining that they can fit in Allahu Akbar. And it has to be removed for the duration that it would take for them to become pure and to pray that prayer. Like let's say that would take you 5 minutes to shower and pray that prayer, even if it went outside of the time. So like let's say Maghrib is 6 p.m. Menses stopped 5:59. Menses returned 6:01. That person would not have to make up that Dhuhr and Asr because they were not even pure for enough time for them to pray their Dhuhr and Asr. Does that make sense? Is that clear for folks? Does anyone want me to explain it again?
Yes.
So specifically Zawal al-Mana.
Yeah.
So Zawal al-Mana, we're looking at two things here. Number one, how much time is remaining of the prayer time? If the time is left remaining is enough to fit one takbirah, Allahu Akbar, then that condition is checked off. Okay. The second thing we're looking at is, was the preventer removed from them for enough time that they could have become pure, like made wudu, for example, and prayed? If it was, for example, the mana was gone for long enough, like for 5 minutes, and then it came back, then we would say, yes, you still have to make up these prayer. If it wasn't, if it was only gone for, let's say, 2 minutes, then say, no, you don't have to make them up. This is especially helpful for a sister who is in a state of irregular bleeding, and then she finds out later that that was actually all hayd, right? Then this sister would not have to make up those prayers, or the sister, her menses stopped, and then another one started, for example. right? If the menses stopped, 2 minutes passed, or her a better example is like the postnatal bleeding stopped, and then immediately after the postnatal bleeding stops, menses started. Let's say, for example, like let's say postnatal bleeding stopped at 5:59. Menses started at 6:01. She wouldn't have to make up that prayer. Does that make sense?
The two prayers.
The two prayers, yes. The two prayers, yes. And then La ilaha illallah Rasulullah, he says,
That's for a recurring preventer.
it could be any preventer. It could be somebody
But
who,
if the preventer doesn't come back and there was time for just takbir al-ihram,
yes,
then it's required.
yes, that is required. We won't
Regardless
even,
of the timing needed to prepare for the prayer and make the prayer.
yes,
Okay.
exactly, yeah, yes.
Um,
Do we have a question from the sisters?
So, so you said the two prayers, like, so for instance, they were an answer,
Mm-hmm.
you have to make that. But if you were, if the preventer was removed, and answer was still in, and you would have to make an answer anyway?
Yes, correct. Correct. Yes. And the reason why is because they say Asr is a time of Dhuhr. Like when we talk about the times of the prayer, one of the times, and we mentioned this in passing quickly yesterday, one of the times is called Waqt Udhr. A time, a time of excuse, like a time that you are, if certain conditions are met, you can pray the prayer in this time. So the Waqt Udhr of Dhuhr, the time of excuse of Dhuhr, is Asr. So say because Asr is a time of Dhuhr, you would have to pray Dhuhr and Asr. Similarly, Isha. Isha is a time for Maghrib, so you would have to pray both.
Are there other examples of excuse besides travel, or the only travel? Or that's beyond the scope?
It would be, I can't remember if he talks about travel in this book, but I'll mention briefly that it would be travel on the relied upon position of our school and rain. Travel and rain, right? And both of those have conditions. Other than the relied upon position, which is the ikhtiyar of Imam al-Nawawi, the opinion of Imam al-Nawawi, is that also includes marad, sickness, right? And that is not, but that's not the relied upon position of the school. However, in some cases, some people you have like a long operation or something like that, right? You have you're in a very difficult situation. It'd be so hard for you to have wudu for two prayers, right? Or to pray the two prayers in their times. Some of the ulama will tell people, okay, take this position. It's a valid position in and of itself. It's just not the relied upon position of the school. It's not the strongest position. La ilaha Rasulullah. Yes.
So let's say they're a woman after Isha's time, she's already prayed Isha, she goes into labor.
Okay.
She hasn't had she hasn't delivered the baby yet, so the postnatal bleeding. But Frederick comes in during that time. I mean, she's laboring, but is she still obligated to make her, any prayers that come in before she actually delivers the baby?
Yeah, she is obligated to make that prayer if she can. If she can't, like for example, she's not in a situation of she's laboring, right? She can't cover her awrah. She probably can't make wudu. She would pray the prayer of faqid al-tuhurain, what they call, which is somebody who does not have the means to make wudu or tayammum. She would pray the prayer. She could pray even in her heart with her eyes. She could indicate with her eyes. She could pray in her heart. And the person should do that such that a prayer time does not pass and they are completely heedless of it, right? They should try their best to pray if a woman can, right? If she's going through so much pain that her mind is not even there, then she's not even of sound mind at that time, right? If the pain is preventing her from even thinking clearly, like it's not possible for her to even think about the Fatiha, for example, she wouldn't even be considered in her sound mind, right? So then that would be considered a manner, right? If she wasn't in her sound mind, that would be a manner. That would be a preventer. And she would only have to make up the prayer if during that period she regained her senses, right? Like let's say the pain subsided for a while and she regained her senses. and then the pain came back and she lost her senses, then that prayer would be something that she would have to make up later, right? She would have to make it up later at a different time. La ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah. I'm curious to see what our mashayikh advise. I'm curious specifically about pregnancy, like or during labor. Inshallah, we can research it. Let me make a note for myself. If there's any other positions. Any other questions? Let's see how we're doing on time. I really wanted to cover this other masala. We have Okay, I think we'll stop there actually. I think we'll stop there. That's a good place to stop. Next time, I believe I'll still be subbing for Sheikh next week, Friday. We will talk about what is upon the parents in terms of commanding their children to pray, right? Which is a very important conversation, and it's important for also folks to understand the age brackets, when to start commanding them, when to start hitting them. What do we mean by hitting? And this applies in prayer and other parts of the Sharia, right? Other obligatory works in the Sharia and other haram things that you're preventing the kid from the Sharia. How does the Sharia look at this, and what is the parent's role in applying these things and making sure their kids apply these rulings and act upon them? Any other questions before we close? Yes, tafadhal.
Is a person sinful in any of these cases of the preventer, or just an obligation upon them?
Yeah, no, they're not sinful.
Okay.
Just an obligation upon them. Yeah. It's not, if they were sinful again, they would have to pray immediately.
Mm.
Right. So somebody, for example, Dhuhr comes in and they decide they're going to take a nap after Dhuhr comes in without praying Dhuhr, and they don't know if they're going to wake up or not. Or they know that they won't wake up. They'll probably wake up after Asr, right? Based on their like previous experience. That person's sinful, and it is obligatory for them to make up that prayer al fawr immediately. Right? Yeah. Any other questions? We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us our seeking knowledge. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward the author, Al-Habib Abdullah bin Hussein bin Tahir, rahimahullah ta'ala, wa nafa'ana bihi wa bikum. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to pray our prayers on time and to grant us sidq and ikhlas in that, and to make the reward of this class and our works go towards the author and our teachers all the way back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sallam wa ila hadrat Nabi sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط